Today we are starting one of the most important ideologies of political theory, socialism. For UGC NET Political Science, socialism is not just one theory, it is a broad family of ideas. So, from the beginning, remember this line. Socialism is an umbrella ideology. It includes utopian socialism, Marxist or revolutionary socialism, democratic or evolutionary socialism, Fabianism, Revisionism, Syndicalism, and Guild Socialism. Let us start with a simple question. Why did socialism arise? Imagine Europe in the 19th century. Industrial capitalism is expanding. Factories are growing. A small class owns the means of production: factories, machines, capital, and land. A large class has only labor power to sell. Liberalism said, individual freedom, private property, free market. But socialism asked, what is the meaning of freedom if a worker is poor, hungry, insecure, and exploited?
So socialism arose as a reaction against the social and economic conditions produced by industrial capitalism and as a revolt against bourgeois property. Now define socialism in exam language. Socialism is a set of doctrines, ideas, and political programs that seek to replace or regulate private ownership of the means of production with some form of social ownership, cooperative ownership, or collective control in order to establish equality and reduce exploitation. The most important value of socialism is equality, especially social and economic equality. Socialism emerged at the beginning of the 19th century, and it is an ideological opposition to capitalism and an attempt to provide a more humane alternative. Students, here you must understand socialism's central argument. Socialists believe that man is social by nature. They reject the idea that society is only a collection of isolated individuals. A socialist will say, no man is an island. Society is organic, individuals are dependent on one another. Therefore, if resources are privately owned by a few, society becomes divided into haves and have-nots, or in Marxist terms, bourgeoisie and proletariat. Private ownership creates class inequality and exploitation, so socialism supports social ownership of resources and a society where income, status, and opportunity are not monopolized by one class. Now we move to the early socialists, also called utopian socialists by Marx and Engels. Why were they called utopian? Because Marx and Engels believed that early socialists had moral imagination but lacked a scientific theory of social change. They criticized capitalism and imagined cooperative societies, but they did not give a strong theory of class struggle, historical materialism, or proletarian revolution. The main early socialists are Robert Owen, Charles Fourier, Saint-Simon, and Proudhon. First, Robert Owen. For exam, remember, Owen is linked with cooperation, environment, education, and villages of cooperation. Owen believed that industry and factories could liberate mankind from poverty and ignorance, but only if production was organized on cooperative principles rather than competitive principles. He believed human nature could be transformed if the environment was reconstructed, and education would be a powerful influence in that reconstructed environment. He also advocated villages of cooperation to provide work to the unemployed. Most importantly, for one-line MCQs, Robert Owen first adopted the term socialist in 1827 in his cooperative magazine. Second, Charles Fourier. Fourier was different from Owen. Owen had faith in industry, but Fourier criticized large industry. He disliked the division of labor because it broke work into small, repetitive, boring activities. His concern was not only equality, but also the pleasure of work. He wanted work to be adjusted to the character and interest of the individual, so, for Fourier, the socialist society should be organized through small communities and small-scale production rather than large impersonal factories. Third, Saint-Simon. Saint-Simon is associated with science, industry, and administration. He believed the 19th century would be the age of science and industry. He respected the common working man and wanted social institutions to be redesigned for the moral, intellectual, and physical improvement of the poorest and most numerous class. Saint-Simon believed that society should have room for one real productive class, the workers. So remember, Saint-Simon does science, industry, administration, and welfare of the poorest class. Fourth, Proudhon. He is famous for the statement, property is theft. He wrote Philosophy of Poverty, and Marx replied with Poverty of Philosophy. Proudhon is also known as a social anarchist because he rejected a centralized state and supported decentralized worker cooperatives. His idea was not state socialism but a network of workers' associations exchanging goods and services. Now students, after early socialism, socialism divides into two major directions, revolutionary socialism and evolutionary socialism. Revolutionary socialism says capitalism cannot be corrected by small reforms. The capitalist order must be overthrown, and the working class must organize itself to establish a socialist mode of production. It is mainly associated with Marx and Engels, and is also called Marxist socialism or scientific socialism. Here, the focus is on class struggle, proletarian revolution, and complete transformation of society. Evolutionary socialism, on the other hand, says socialism can be achieved gradually through democratic methods, parliament, legislation, trade unions, welfare policies, and public control. It does not want complete transformation in one stroke. It tries to reconcile the interest of the working class with other classes, especially the middle class. That is why it is also called democratic socialism. For exam, remember the contrast: revolutionary and sudden transformation, evolutionary and gradual reform, revolutionary and Marxist, evolutionary and democratic and reformist. Now let us cover the types of evolutionary socialism because UGC NET asks many questions from here. First is Fabian Socialism. It developed in England with the foundation of the Fabian Society in 1884. It is considered the first systematic theory of democratic or evolutionary socialism. The Fabians did not believe that socialism would come overnight. They believed in gradual change, constitutional methods, and the role of the educated middle class. The important names are George Bernard Shaw, Sidney Webb, Beatrice Webb, Sidney Olivier, Graham Wallas, and G.D.H. Cole. Fabian economics was influenced by the Ricardian law of rent, rather than Marx's labor theory of value. Sabine explains that Fabian socialism was not based on Marxist class struggle. It was closer to an extension of liberalism, correcting the bad effects of an uncontrolled economy and linking liberty with social security. Second is German social democracy. It is associated with Ferdinand Lassalle. Lassalle accepted some Marxist ideas, especially the economic interpretation of history, but rejected bloody revolution. His idea was that workers should organize themselves into political parties, win majority in parliament, and move peacefully from a capitalist state to a workers' state. So remember, Lassalle, Darwin, constitutional and peaceful transition to socialism. Third is revisionism. This is associated with Edward Bernstein. Bernstein said Marx's predictions were not coming true. He argued that peasants were not disappearing, the middle class was not vanishing, crises were not becoming larger, and misery was not constantly increasing. Therefore, he said socialism should be treated more as a movement than as a final goal. He supported the parliamentary road to socialism. For UGC NET, remember, Bernstein, revisionism, shun evolutionary socialism, chun parliamentary road, shun movement rather than final goal. Fourth is syndicalism. It developed mainly in France and Latin countries. The word syndicate means workers' union. Syndicalists considered labor unions and their federations as the cells of the future socialist order. They wanted labor unions to be independent of political parties. Their famous phrase is socialization without the state. They accepted Marx's idea of class struggle, but instead of a political state, they emphasized the economic organization of workers through unions. Fifth is Guild Socialism. It developed in England in the first quarter of the 20th century and was inspired by French syndicalism and the old guild system. Guild socialists wanted worker representation in industrial management and also emphasized the role of consumers. G.D.H. Cole is the key thinker. He proposed functional parliament, functional representation, and industrial democracy. So remember, Guild Socialism, G.D.H. Cole, Corsets, functional representation, and industrial democracy. Before concluding, students, let us connect socialism with Marxism very briefly. Marxism is a form of revolutionary socialism. Sabine explains that for Marx, the mode of production is the mainspring of society. Changes in production explain changes in politics and culture. Marx's historical sequence is broadly feudalism, capitalism, and socialism, with class struggle as the mechanism of change. But remember, all socialism is not Marxism. Fabianism, German social democracy, Revisionism, and Guild Socialism are non-revolutionary or evolutionary socialist traditions. Now revise in one line: socialism arose against industrial capitalism. Its central value is equality. Its method may be revolutionary or evolutionary. Early socialism is called utopian. Marxism is scientific or revolutionary socialism. Fabianism and Revisionism are democratic and gradual. Syndicalism says socialization without the state. Guild Socialism says functional representation and industrial democracy. For UGC NET, prepare this topic through 4 patterns: definition-based questions, thinker-idea questions, thinker-book questions, and type of socialism matching questions. The most important names are Owen, Fourier, Saint-Simon, Proudhon, Marx, Engels, Lassalle, Bernstein, G.B., Shaw, Sidney Webb, Beatrice Webb, Graham Wallace, and G.D.H. Cole.